As a follow-up to this week's COVID-19 webinar, I'm going to answer a few of the questions that we got. A number of you asked about employees who had traveled to other states, but for various reasons weren't covered by the New York travel ban, and whether or not they would be eligible for leave under FFCRA. So let's take, for example, a non-essential employee who's traveled to Kentucky, got back yesterday, and then today Kentucky's added to the list. So they're not covered by the quarantine order, but are they nonetheless entitled to leave under the FFCRA? So there's two types of leave under the FFCRA. As a reminder, there's the emergency FMLA leave, which is really for childcare issues. And then there's the emergency paid sick leave, and there's a number of categories that can qualify an employee for leave under there. So the fact that that you as a company might tell the employee, well, you're not required to quarantine by this government order, but we're going to require you to quarantine as a safety precaution. That sort of instruction by an employer isn't one of those categories qualifying an employee for leave under the FFCRA. However, they may still qualify other ways. So if they get a note from their healthcare provider advising them to quarantine, that makes them eligible for leave under the FFCRA. If they start showing symptoms and they're seeking diagnosis, again, that qualifies them for that emergency paid sick leave. There certainly are circumstances where those employees, even if they're not covered by the New York State travel ban order, may still qualify for emergency paid sick leave. Another question that a few of you asked was, well, I have a non-essential employee coming back from one of these states. I really don't want them to have to quarantine for 14 days. Can I just send them for a test? And if it comes back negative, then they don't have to quarantine anymore and they can come back to work early. Unfortunately, the state's FAQs on the travel ban order do say, you know, symptoms may come anytime within the 14-day period. A negative test doesn't guarantee that you're not going to end up having COVID, so no, you can't cut that 14-day period short. One final question that a few of you asked was about intermittent leave under the FFCRA and the upcoming school reopenings. A lot of school districts have indicated that they're doing some sort of hybrid plan. So some days of the week, students are in school in person, whereas some days they're at home. And so a lot of employers are anticipating getting requests for emergency FMLA and emergency paid sick leave under the FFCRA, but on an intermittent basis. You know, I need this leave every Thursday and Friday because my kids are going to be home from school. And so some of you asked, does this work the same way as intermittent leave under traditional FMLA? And the answer is definitely not. There is a complete different set of rules for intermittent leave under the FFCRA, and it's important to be familiar with those. They are set forth in those FAQs on the U.S. Department of Labor website. So just some examples of how they're different. First of all, the employer has, in some circumstances, the employer has the option to permit employees to use leave intermittently, but they don't have to permit employees to ever use this leave intermittently. But there are other circumstances, especially where the employee is not teleworking the other part of the time, but is coming into the office on those other days that they're not taking intermittent leave. Depending on the qualifying reason for the EPSL, the employer may not be able to permit the employee to take intermittent leave. In certain circumstances, it's actually prohibited to permit the use of intermittent leave at all under the FFCRA. So before you grant any intermittent leave requests, it's important that you become familiar with that guidance. Any fact-specific questions can be directed to your favorite bond attorney. I'm sorry we can't get to every question that we get on the webinar, but we tried to cover the ones that numerous people were asking, and we hope that this has been helpful. Thank you so much.